a lot of the new year has to do with goal setting or like new beginnings, these sorts of things. And, you know, the Bible doesn't really speak to like New Year's Eve or to the 4th of July but it does speak to like freedom in Christ, or it does speak to new birth. You've become a new creation. So there's a newness. The Bible also speaks to the Proverbs. It says like, in the hearts, people plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. And so we think about like goal setting, what that looks like. You know, where's that line of like, hey, I'm setting a goal of what's to come in the new year, and I'm setting my heart to this course, but the Lord's the one who establishes these steps. And then if the goal doesn't get met, you know, how much of that is like just because I was, you know, distracted in meeting that goal, or it was because the Lord had a different goal in mind. And how much of our goals are aligned with God's goals? You know, what would God's goals be for 2026 versus what would Nick Caldwell's goals, or whoever, fill in the blank? You know, what do you think God's goals are?
Interesting stuff, you know, especially since I think we've talked about this before. We've talked about it with other people before, but my perspective on the will of humanity and just broadly speaking, theologically, how God is always carrying out his purposes in every season and every moment through everything that happens. I see goal setting for the new year as fundamentally grounded in growing your understanding and submission to his truth in everything that you're involved in every relationship that you're a part of, because that's the foundation of everything you do. And so if I'm setting goals, I'm going to think about what opportunities God has placed before me going into this new year and this new season. And I'm going to think to myself, okay, clearly he has a purpose for me here. If he stops or he achieves his purpose for having me here, phenomenal. Then we'll move on to whatever the next venture is, the next involvement is. I think that's where it kind of starts for me, is just looking at the opportunities available. And then at that point, it would be understanding what he's put on your heart for each involvement. And when I say that, I kind of mean something related to the way he's changing your perspective. You know, it's very easy to go through a season of life and have a lot of the same commitments, right? So like work might not change a lot. If you're in school might not change a lot. A lot of the practical stuff will be the same, but you're still changing, even though your practical circumstances are generally the same. And so every day you wake up as a new person with a grown perspective, a perspective that is improved, hopefully from the day before, assuming you're Christian. That's what I'm assuming. And so I think once you identify those opportunities for involvement, then you start to think, okay, what has the Lord been revealing in my heart that I need to grow in this particular involvement of my life? So like for work example, that's an opportunity that you might be involved in. Something that you might set as a goal is to learn a certain amount more about this particular aspect of your work so that you can achieve this particular outcome, which would achieve greater overall glorification of God in that circumstance. That's kind of the way I perceive goal setting, I suppose, through that Christian lens, because I think that appropriately aligns with how God is working in the hearts of his people, how he's putting stuff in our mind, how he's shaping our heart, conforming us to his image, and growing us in righteousness and obedience, so that we can continue to glorify him and be an effective light in every place that we're involved in. But I'm kind of curious what you think about that then.
Spin off of what you were saying about like every aspect of life, our involvement, because Matthew 22:37 through 39 comes to mind, where Jesus was speaking with the Sadducees, the lawyer, and they asked him like, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And then he said, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so there was 4 parts mentioned: all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, and all of our strength. That's the greatest commandment. If we were to sum up the Bible, that's what God's desire for us. And so that's basically right, like our That's our pursuit and motive and everything. And so if we're setting a goal, one, we can take that and say, okay, am I setting these goals with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength? But then two, when I actually go about to achieve them, is it with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength to glorify God, still loving my neighbor as myself? I've been really reflecting on, Jesus gives us a way of life. Like he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And when Christianity first started out, it was called the way because people were like, what is this new age religion, basically? And they said, oh, it's a way of life, right? And so therefore the term the way was how Christians were described, because it's a way of living, it's a way of life, the way that God desires us to live. And so with that verse and with Colossians, when it says, whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord, who is your master. And that's just applying that to our goals or whatever they are. If we come in with that perspective, it's going to be the heart that God desires. And then the other side of the coin would probably be what the actual practical goal is, right? If my goal is like read 50 books, okay, good. You might grow mentally, but what if 20 of those books are worldly? What if they're steering you toward materialism and away from holiness? Then it's like, is your goal God honoring? You could read those books with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but you're doing something that's maybe not what God desires. Whereas if your goal is to pray daily, or to help mow your neighbor's lawn, right? Like it could seem like it's a small goal, but it's still pushing the needle forward in some way. Yeah, man. Yeah. What do you think?
I think you spurred a new thought in my mind, but before I get to that, I think I would agree. Yeah, it's so important that our goals are God oriented, even if they're not God specific, right? So if you wanted to set the goal of like the read 50 books goal, it's like, that's great, but you have to make sure that God orientation is there. It's like, why do I want to read 50 books? It's like, is it just because that's something I want to do? Or is this because I want to get information that I can use to glorify God in a greater way, maybe in one of the things that I'm involved in my life, right? So that's kind of a thought that you communicated that I think is very relevant for Christians, especially. Broadly speaking, kind of tied to that goal, though, the question that I think needs to get asked is what do we do with goals that we don't achieve in the set period that we achieve them? And I think that's kind of tied to the God orientation aspect of that, but in a broad sense, because when you're setting goals, what's the actual fundamental goal is to achieve all your goals, right? So the goal of goal setting is to achieve your goals. So if you really wanted to go there, you got to step back and really realize, okay, when I'm setting goals, my goal is that I should achieve these because they are achievable and because they're based on honest reflection about where I am and what I can reasonably achieve, right? And so if we don't achieve goals, I think that it's not enough to just be like, okay, I'll set that as a goal for the next period of time, for next year, for instance, if we're talking about year by year. I think you have to be like, okay, clearly I wasn't honest enough or transparent enough with myself when I was setting goals the first time. Clearly I didn't have the right orientation when I was setting out to achieve the main goal, which is to achieve the goals that I set. And so I think approaching our failure to meet our goals has to start there. And that's a very important question, right? Because it's really easy to get dissuaded from setting goals at all, or to have any confidence that you'll achieve future goals if you don't know how to deal with the failure to achieve the goals that you do set. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you think about that, since we're talking about God-oriented goals and dealing with failing to meet our goals. What do you think?
There's a lot of rabbit holes in my head right now.
I'm sure.
God is glorified in us failing to meet a goal and failing and accomplishing what is set. I think sometimes we look at failures as exactly that, a failure. Whereas in God's eyes, sometimes our failures are the best thing for us because we were pursuing the wrong thing, or it's a lesson that we had to learn. Sometimes we learn more in our failures than we do in our accomplishments, right? Like God teaches us humility, those kinds of things, or like harder perseverance and work ethic. So, I mean, sometimes I would say maybe the best goals are the ones we fail at.
in some sense, yeah, right?
I'm going to use a business management term just to sugarcoat this whole conversation.
Ooh,
It depends.
we love corporate jargon. We love corporate jargon.
Right? This is why we have two business majors.
Yeah, is what it is.
Well, because it depends, right? Like, what is the goal that you failed in, and what is the goal that you achieved? I think it depends on what that goal is, how you go about that, how we glorify God in that. I think in some sense, though, we just kind of take from our conversation we were having with the man before we started this pod. He was talking about accountability, and what really helps us to not fail a goal is to have accountability. If we're only accountable with ourselves, we're probably going to let stuff slide here and there. But if we have somebody holding us accountable, speaking into our goals, which is what a beautiful thing to have marriage, where y'all know, like, if you're skipping a gym day, bro, today is going to be all over you.
We hope not, but it's very likely to be the case that she would not like that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask a question in that, like, y'all are setting goals. I'd be curious to like recircle back to this conversation 3 to 6 months from now and be like, what does it look like as a married couple to set goals, and that level of accountability that comes with it? Because obviously, of all people, like, we can set goals individually, but I'm not going to know you as well as your wife will, and like how to hold you to that and hold you accountable. Whereas like you could speak into my goals as well. And it could be like hey, did you like, you said you're going to read the scripture these 7 days. Did you read the scriptures? Yes or no? Right. And so, but there's like a different level in it, because we could also just go through the motions and accomplish our goal, but that's also missing the heart of God, is to do it with life and purpose.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good idea. And when you come back on in future, we'll definitely have to check in on that. You bring up a good idea, a good point. When you're doing goal setting, it's important that you do maintain that accountability in that process, and you actually hold not only yourself, but the other person to that as well. And so obviously there's a difference between theory and reality. They don't always match up perfectly, but when we were setting our targets for 2026, our theory is that we wanted at least specifically one achievable goal in each of the 6 things that we're involved in. We have 6 involvements. That's what we call them. We have, let's see if I can remember them off the top of my head. We have work. We have marriage, like relationship building. We have home care. We have church. And we have, for me, I have my podcast. For her, she has school. And there's a 6th one that I'm forgetting, which is really unfortunate. But the bottom line is, we have those 6 different involvements that we're going to be involved in or plan to be involved in for 2026. We want 6 specific measurable goals that we can achieve, that we believe are reasonable. And then the 7th that we set, 7's a nice number. It's cute, isn't it? It's the number of God. So it's the number of completeness, God completing things. And so for the 7th goal, we wanted to set one goal for the other person. And so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out throughout the year, because for the individual goals, those are things that we're going to be mostly responsible for and accountable for completing. But for the shared goal, there will be that involvement of shared accountability, right? So I think that your idea of tracking that throughout the year is very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good.
Let's go.
It's good, man.